The principle clear? Matlab, of course, anybody can be online at any point of time, but certain people are obligated to be online on every day. So today's alphabets, people whose names start with what? Yesterday was A, B, C, D, E, F. So today alphabets from G, H, I, J, K, L, है ना? A, B, C, D, F, G, H, I, J, K, L. हाँ. So from these alphabets, people who have names starting with any of these alphabets, at least one person represent each one of the alphabets should be online. Others who want to be and are able to be online, you're all welcome. But there is an obligation. So what are the groups again? G, anyone for G? H, I, J, K, L. In this whole thing, I can see Kerunuru, and Insha. Do you have specific problem of not being online with video for today? Insha?
Good afternoon, ma'am. I'm sorry, ma'am, I'm not from the section. I just wanted to be here, and it is my first class, so I don't know the rules and regulations.
You have to have your video on now that you are in the class today.
All right, I didn't know the rules and regulations.
No, we are still settling the rules and regulations. We are saying alphabetically, some people have to be on video so that I can feel I'm talking to people and not to my wall. That's fine.
Sure, ma'am.
And other rule is also that anybody who is wanting to join our classes should write to me and also prefix ZX before their name, so I know that they are not in this class. No, this is for the purpose of attendance, for me to keep record of it.
Okay, ma'am.
Ma'am, so one of our friends wanted to join your class. So shall I ask him to send you a mail? Or
yeah,
okay.
yeah. And also, you should know that my last semester's classes on gender justice from March onward till March, April, I think we went up to May. They're already on my YouTube channel. So they want to follow that, they can do that. Initial classes. There's a, I think, Insha, you need to mute yourself. Yeah, because I'm getting a resound. So those of you, because anyone can access them, they're on my YouTube channel, and they are all classes recorded on Zoom platform I was using last semester. And the initial classes will be missed, but which are on the readings we have on the course. They are also there, which I did those readings with my PhD scholars, and they have made presentations on those readings. So actually our whole course, excepting the 3-4 readings we are introducing this semester, everything else is there. So then if they follow those YouTube channel, certainly there are two limitations. One, that, one is the freedom that they can watch them at any time. They don't have to follow our schedule. The disadvantage is only that they cannot ask questions in the class as you will be able to do it here. So it's up to them. If they want to see what I'm doing in my class, they can look at the channels. If they want to participate in this semester class, then they must write to me and also prefix. It is also possible to join classes without taking my permission if they have the official email ID. I'm aware of that. But it will facilitate my job if anybody who, even if they're joining without my permission, but before they do that, kindly add ZX before your name. So I would know that these are the students outside my class. So, but certainly it's, courtesy demands, even though the system permits you, courtesy demand that you write to me and take permission. I'm not going to deny permission, but still I know that, there are people who are wanting to join in. Why? The other thing I've noticed, 2 people from LC2 applied. So one wrote a mail, and then the second one copied that mail and sent the same mail, excepting changing their roll number and name. I don't think that's a good idea. That doesn't show me your capacity of individualizing, of showing your own self. So don't do that. Write to me. Don't just 2 sentences you have to write. You're a student, sentence you want to join your class. So that I appreciate a lot more than you copying a very flowery language quote, quotation from somebody else. So be genuine, be ingenious, be your own self when you come to this class. Do not just do it because somebody else has said the same thing. You like the language. I'm quite sure you can be simple and straight and still honest. So I'll appreciate that a lot more when you write to me. Just write in your own words, whatever you want to say. And you don't have to have flowery languages. It is your last semester. You are a great teacher. None of that works for me at all. It's all unnecessary. You will know whether I'm a great teacher or not at the end of the semester. As of now, this is just hearsay. Especially if you've never been in my earlier classes, it's just a hearsay. And you know the principle of Evidence Act. Is hearsay admissible, reliable? Then what's the whole point of writing? We have heard. Otherwise, you've heard. Now you do not know. At the end of semester, you can tell me I'm a good teacher or not a good teacher. You can keep quiet if you don't find me a good teacher, and be vocal if I'm a good teacher. But no point in saying this at this point of time. No? So understand that a lot of things we do out of courtesies and out of we think it's a good gesture. It's not necessarily. And that also takes us to the point that everything which we say and do is not necessarily good or bad because somebody else says so. We must apply our mind for our own lives to determine what's good, what's not good. Which practices we have been brought up with are good, which of them are not. And unless we keep applying our mind, there's no point of studying and studying in higher education. Higher education is about making your own learnings in the light of what others have told you. Maybe others have told you, you also find that's truth. Sometimes you may disagree with them. But the ability to analyze as to what has been given to us, what we've taken as given, is that correct? And this happens constantly. Yesterday, I was surprised at myself about this judgment we're talking about the tort case where, for accident, for the death of the wife, the court have said equal amount as the husband paid. So on the first flash, I was also thinking, oh, what a great step. But yesterday, as I was talking to you, suddenly occurred to me that, well, it's not necessarily the best step and the best first step forward. It is still reinforcing the same thing. Woman's worth is what her husband is worth. That's not what we are asking for. So that didn't happen to me in the first go. But as I spoke yesterday, it just came spontaneously to my head also that actually even in this very progressive judgment, it's a leap forward. But when you start looking at the judgments on women's death and compensation, we started with saying women's work is equivalent to an unskilled labor, unskilled daily laborer. And the calculation of compensation was on that ground. Then we moved on to the second subject, no, she is semi-skilled. So we have come a very long way from there to say that no, her worth is as much as her husband's. But we have again fallen in the pitfall of the standard being still the husband to determine how much is her work worth for. And it happened because I'm constantly listening to even myself, and I'm listening to the others, and I'm reflecting on what I've learned. And this is always a growing process. If you start analyzing things for yourself, you will learn this your way. Once you become a lawyer, you become a judge, you become a law officer, you become a businessman, whatever you become. If at the end of the day, you will reflect on what all has happened and what is the implication, you will pick up your own lessons in life and determine which way you want to go. Sometimes you say something, your parents get upset, your parents say something, you get upset. Try to find out what was underlying that, which has reflected in that outburst. And you will be able to understand people much better. So coming back to this whole gender thing, I'm saying all this because it's all very connected with the gender stereotyping. Constantly. And I've just learned in my own, since I've started teaching this course. I had a student in my first year LLB, a male student. And my impression about that student was that he is from what we call as a typical feudal family, and he's a feudal kind of a male there. Though it was, there's never a chance for me to comment it, but in my head, that was my image of that student. And later on, he did come to my gender justice class. And I realized that how wrong I was. When it came to presenting readings and identifying what was important to the reading, he had the most acute developed sense of injustice against women. He knew exactly what this reading was about. And I said, oh, no, look, despite me teaching gender justice, but despite me being aware of how I was having a stereotypical image of the student. It's always a learning process. Every batch you learn that some people will look very suave and very modern. And when you speak to them, scratch the surface, and it's just the other way around. Appearances can fool us a lot. And it fooling us is happening not only for the others, it happens to ourselves also. We think we are very modern. And I ask this question to many women. And let me ask that question to women and also men. How many of the women would work after marriage, work in the sense of taking an paid job? How many of the women, how many of you women, if you're not already married and you will get married, how many of you would think that the decision to work or not work is going to be your decision and not your husband's decision? Okay, so I can see some hands up. Those people who have visible to me. Now I'm asking the question to the men. How many of the men will have the decision to work or not to work without consulting their wives? Whether they will take the decision to work or not to work. As now I can see only Ankit, who is visible to me in the male category. You can write. I'm asking the men in my class. Let me start. Where is the chat? Okay. So now looking at the chat for you to write down. How many of you, and you have to say yes if you will be doing that. So yeah, so when you will get married, will you decide, will you take the decision of working or not working all by yourself, or you will take the decision in consultation with your wives? The hypothetical question, you do not know what you will do at that point in time, but at this point, what you think. Girls can also write their answer. How many of you will take that decision yourself without consulting your husband? So we have one answer, consultation with wife. That consultation with wife is, how many men think they have the choice of not working after marriage? Men, please write. If you think you have a choice of not working after marriage, write down. It depends. If she earns more, I will consult. If she doesn't, then no choice. So women think they have a choice whether to work or not to work. Men think, usually, this is the standard families we have, that men do not think they have a choice of not working, irrespective of the fact whether their wives are working or not working. The wives think that they have a choice of not working if their husbands are working. Isn't it? So can the wives take a decision without consulting the husband of working or not working, while the husbands are not given the choice of not working without consulting their wives? How would you feel if your husband was to just chuck a job one day and say, well, sorry, I don't feel like working. I'm happy looking after the family. So wife is also not working or working whatever way, doesn't matter. But will you be happy if your husband took a decision of a transfer, of whatever, whether chucking the job or going away somewhere else, taking up a job somewhere else without consulting you? Do you think it's a good setup? So we are again trapped into thinking. A lot of educated women think that after marriage, whether they will work or not cannot be the decision of the husband or husband's family. It will be their independent decision. And we are very progressive because we think that, and we will kind of, if we need to fight, we will fight for it also. So fight with persuasion is one position. But to say, well, I will not consult, then tomorrow you don't have a right to ask your husband to consult in taking major life decisions. So in our desire to become independent, we forget the basic nitty-gritties of living together, of being members of the same family.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes.
Talking about the consultation or the permission, because consultation, okay, that is one thing, or taking permission from that person that am I allowed to work, that is a different thing that I won't go for. Taking the permission, consultation I would happily go for, because to have a happy life you have to have consultation, not only on this matter but every other matter of household work.
Exactly. Exactly. So the question as to whether I work or not is not up for debate. How I'll work and what compromise to be reached, that is subject to consultation. But the fact that I will work is my decision alone, according
Okay.
to me.
Okay. So if your decision is not to work, are you okay with that? Or you think because you have studied, you must work?
That is a
And
choice.
this question and that question is equally applicable to boys also. That because they have been brought up from their childhood believing that they will be the earning member, certainly. If wife is earning, a lot of young people now believe that no, both of us will be working. But whether working for the purposes of earning is absolutely essential because you have taken education. There may be any other reason also. You may not. There may be certainly families which have got economic need. That's one reason to work. The other reason is that's the argument which has been taken a lot of time, that if there is no economic need, women need not work. So whether the paid work is done only because you get salary, or is there something else also which you get by doing a paid work? Apart from salary, what is it that you get?
Gratification, in the sense of realizing
Gratification,
your potential.
a social networking, connectivity with other people, life's experience, exposure. There's
What
so
of
many things.
independence?
Yes,
Financial
so many other
independence.
things which all are denied to women in this with this economic argument. So you get recognition. So for men also. So all this you get because you are working to earn. And therefore, it is important to get out of the stereotypical image that if I'm liberated, I will decide whether to work, not to work, and what kind of work. And certainly, if there is a resistance from the family, then women, anybody, no, all of us have been doing it with our parents at this point of time, negotiating our spaces. And certainly, a lot of people have this misunderstanding about feminist approaches to life, that they are man haters. They want to be liberated at the cost of families. It is none of that. It is only saying, give me my space. That's what everybody is asking for. The space has been secured to the men by the fact of their being born as men, while for women, they have to fight for that space, the same space, even if it was a comparison category, that the same space which men have in decision making, in enjoying quality of life, in doing whatever is required to be done. So certainly we need to really understand that how so many things have been taken for granted. And when we take a step forward, like the Supreme Court has done, we think we have made a progress. But unless we reflect that where is this progress leading us to, what is the value still ingrained in that progress, we might be making progress but destroying something valuable.
Ma'am, in all fairness, the judgment by the Supreme Court was delivered by three men, Justices Suryakant, Ramana, and Nazir. So I mean, it's typical. It's typical for an Indian male to kind of
No, but look at the other judgment. What was that? Sabrimala. The woman judge disagreed. The
Yes.
dissenting judge. So that's what I'm saying. That we blindly say make women head of NCW, make a scheduled caste person a head of the scheduled caste commission. We think person belonging to that group or gender will do a better job, but it is not necessarily so, because it is not the sex of the person. It is the ideology of that person, whether it's a male or a female, that makes the difference. If you look at women upliftment, so to say, most of the time it is the men who have led the, when you start with Raja Ram Mohan Roy, you start with Phule, you name them. There are so many men who have worked for the cause of women. Of course, women have also worked for the cause of women, but it is not your biological sex which determines for whose interest you will work. It is your thinking pattern. Do you care for the other? If you care for the other, you can be a man or you can be a woman and still do justice to the others, because this whole divide in the society between us and them is what leads to the friction and discrimination and downgrading the other one. So, all right, returning to the discussion we were having yesterday on hierarchy. And we were questioning whether hierarchy is essential. So when we say hierarchy, it can take various shapes of, when you look at, for example, this is in the teaching profession, is very much conversations in the classroom setting. How is the classroom set up? The teacher has a high pedestal. They usually stand and students sit one behind the other. The brighter students, active students, take the front seats, and the laid-back students take the back seats. Sometimes it may happen that a bright student who wanted a front seat was a little late and therefore did not get that seat. Now look at this platform, the e-platform. All of you are in the front row. And this I learned from my student. They think that, no, ma'am, the class is better because I think you're talking to me only. There's nobody else to distract me from the teacher. So I am always in the front row when it is the e-platform. And that made me think, and this has been in the studies also, that setting up the classroom in the rows, one behind the other pattern has been have a shoe so that everybody is in the front row only. If it's a small class, you can be sitting in a shoe form. In seminars, when we sit, should we all be sitting around the table, or should there be a head of the table and then should be others? In the Western culture, there used to be a head in the dining table. So where the male host will sit, on the opposite side, the female host will sit. So we were creating hierarchies even when there was no necessity to create hierarchies. When you're sitting around the dining table, do you want to give hierarchy that no person sitting on this seat will be superior than this seat? But that's how culture had evolved at some point of time. Now we are wanting to break all that. So certainly division of work is essential. If both the husband and wife are working and there are children and there are other family members, there are old and disabled persons, somebody need to take care. You cannot say that, well, both of us are working, we will not take care. Or we cannot say, no, because men have been traditionally working, therefore he'll continue to work, the wife should give up. That's where the problem is. That once we have divided, and also for me, I find no problem at all if a couple decides that one of them, whichever is that, irrespective of the pressure on them, up to their own liking, if they decide, okay, I'll stay home, look after the family, and you go out. We do not have a social security. We do not have sufficient support systems available, and especially in the middle class families, where somebody else will come and look after our family. We have to do it ourselves. So either the working couple divides the work, that, okay, both of us have to do housework, both of us will work. Or we say, okay, I will not work, you work, I will look after the family. So division of work is okay. But then to say the one who earns is better off than the one who doesn't work, that's where the problem starts. So division of work is necessary for organization, for achieving the end result. Now you look at any machinery which functions, you look at your fan. look at air conditioner, heater, whatever. There are so many components there. Each one of them have a definite purpose for them. If any of the machinery part malfunctions, the whole machine goes off. So not all parts can discharge all the functions. Depending on what is the role of that part has to discharge that part only. And but the moment we say Hindus the Brahmins should do this, Shudras should do this, women should do this, men should do that, then we get into trouble. I may have the best oratory power. I want to be a speaker. I should be permitted to be a speaker. So it's kind of within the realm of gender also. Some men would be happier being mathematicians. Some would like to be the artist. Some would like to take care of the family. So, or some of them maybe want to be the nurses, men nurses. So it's all your aptitude. So once we say that in the profession, you have the choice to decide which profession you want to go. And you look at, what were the 3 Idiots? The main lesson was that you should do the work you like and enjoy. Parents should not be forcing you to do that. So if you say that in the choice of paid work, the same has to apply to the unpaid work also. But just because somebody is an artist, you cannot say, oh, this fellow is lesser than the topmost scientist. The moment we start giving hierarchies among different professions, among division of work, among different parts of the same machine, then the problem starts. And in the human relationship, that's what we have ended up doing. When you look at traditional families, there was clear division of work. Women, most of our mothers, grandmothers, looked after families, and our fathers, grandfathers earned. As long as it's a cohesive unit, and the fathers and grandfathers are not asserting their power to take decision making to the exclusion of women or overriding the women because they are earners, that's not a problem. But the moment the earning member starts saying, I have the last word because it is my money, then the problem starts. So the contribution of the non-earning members then becomes lower, even though we do know that most of the men, if their wife dies, they remarry. They cannot live without another person looking after their families. Women, on the other hand, if their husbands die, usually do not remarry. They cope up with work, with children, with the care of the family. So which means actually men are dispensable to the women, but women are not dispensable by the men. But their work is still not recognized as of any economic value. In my personal life, I know that this woman's work is very important, but I realize the importance of that woman's work after she's gone. And therefore, she has to be replaced by another woman. So we need to, so the small point I'm making here is that we have the division of labor. And division of labor would not have been a problem if it did not come from the perception that housework is unimportant. It is lower than the job that the men do. So on the face of it, if you don't have money, you can't go and buy the vegetable which the woman will cook. So cooking is seen as something which has been enabled by the money I provided. But who enabled you to go to work in the first place? Could you go to your workplace on time, on a regular basis, unless there were these women looking after your needs for the morning breakfast and clean clothes and ironing and whatever else you require? So it's a cycle. It's a cycle, but this legal system and the society did not recognize that cycle. So then that leads to the question that how come this division of labor happened? Why was it not that in some families men were working at home, in some families women were working at home? This could have also happened. Division of labor is then gender neutral. Then how did the division of work became gendered? How did it happen that only women will be working at home and men will be working outside the home? And then they will control everything else because they are getting money for lots of other things. What do you think? Why did this division of labor happened on the sex categorization? There are two things. What I'm saying, division of labor is not a bad thing per se. What I'm challenging, I'm asking you to challenge and think about is that why the gender, why the hierarchy happened in the division of labor. And also, why was it that division of labor was done on the basis of the sex of the person in the family?
Ma'am, I think the reproductive powers played a role in it because, when women became pregnant, for some time, they used to be incapable of going out and working. Like, and there was no such restriction with males. Sorry, excuse me.
So tell me, Nidhi, was it? Nidhi, tell me what you think.
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, I just got a call. Yes, ma'am. So, women.
No. I'm asking
First,
you a question. A further thing to think about. It's a good starting point for discussing that during their pregnancy and childbirth, women are physically a bit confined, and therefore somebody else needed to take care of them. But
yes, ma'am.
When you look at this whole thing about guardianship, so who produced the baby from the womb, from the body, is women. Why did the women, even though they are producing the baby from their body, were not made the natural guardians? How did the fathers become the natural guardians? And not only guardians, they actually, when you look at our old stories, they were absolute owners of wives and children. My favorite story on this one is Raja Harishchandra, known for his Satyavadi Raja Harishchandra. Sold his wife and sold his son. Can you sell somebody something which doesn't belong to you? So even they were not even considered. The tradition or whatever this whole practice of selling human beings meant that some human beings were not even recognized as human beings. They were considered as chattel, as things. But not to sell things, na? So women, slaves, children were all not considered human beings. They were considered as chattels of the men. How did that, how did this, so if you look after somebody for some period, you become a chattel of the other. So what we are finding in the pattern is that in the name of biology of the woman, men acquired superiority. And that extended beyond logical limitations. So when you suppose the woman presently, I think they've got a 71 years of age as their average span of life in India today. This was much lower earlier. For over 71 years, what is the period of time in which they remain, quote unquote, incapable or constrained because of pregnancy and childbirth? So even if you say today's women give birth to 2-3 children at the most, earlier they were giving 11. So even if it's 11, it's 11 years out of 63 years. So even if 11 years somebody has looked after you, periodically, they acquire absolute ownership rights over your person. So something else was at play. So woman's body was certainly a starting point for claiming that. And when you look at the Marxist explanation of that, how this whole thing came about, this whole patriarchal, the higher status of men came about, the Marxists claim that it is all because of the concept of private property. As long as there was no private property, there was no need to regulate or control anybody else. Before that, everything was just commons. Everybody owned everything together. The moment we learned to make tools, So everybody was using their hands and their physical power to get their needs for the day of eating. That was the only need. There was no other need. Otherwise, you have caves, you have all other mechanisms to look after yourself. But the only thing you need to fend, and all the animals also have to only fend for their food. Other things are provided by nature, either by in terms of their body furs or in terms of warm places within caves, etc., whatever else they were doing. So then you killed a bird, ate it, and then ate as much as you wanted. Somebody else can take the remaining. So there was no need to guard any property because it belonged. You take what you need and then leave it to the others to take. But the moment we discovered tools, we made tools out of stones and twigs, we were able to gather more than what we needed. The moment you get more than what you need, and you have taken, you have got it because of your own labor. You made the tool, you did the hunting, you have got that animal. Now that, what do you call that? The desire to now hold on to your property, because you will need it in the evening also. If you not to now need to protect it against the other, you need to have physical power more than the other. Otherwise, the other person will take it from you. So initially, people got into small groups. You needed another person to then protect your property also. The need became clearer. This is also how the state gradually came into being. So people became into groups. And in those groups, again, everybody was free to mingle with whoever. But gradually, the men discovered that women produce babies by connecting with the man. So previously, there was no ownership over children. Nobody knew whose child it was. Only the woman was known. But the moment men discovered that this child has been born because of the connection with me, the only way to then claim ownership was to say that I am the person, because body of the woman is known. It is the body of the man which is not known who is the father. And therefore, by guardianship, the guardianship right reflect that it is the assertion of the father over the child, which is not visible. With the DNA now we can know who is the father. Without the DNA test, we did not know who the father was. Therefore, unless you made father as the guardian, we do not know who is the guardian, no, who is the male guardian. We know the woman, everybody knows. So the moment men got to know that women can produce children, which will then become their own force. So then that led to the enslavement of women. If I can confine the woman only to myself, then I know the offspring is mine. But if the woman is free to mingle with other men, I would not know whose offspring is this. So the desire to have more people whom I can control first resulted into enslavement of women, so that the men can control their offspring also. And this whole group then together will fight the others. So you can have more women, more children, your force is much bigger. In poor families, more hands, more mouth, which means more hands also. So more women means more children, more your personal force to fight these others who are now eyeing your property. So all that led to fiefdoms, it led to small tribes, it led to all these groupings which are fighting with the others. And then these other thoughts from the liberal thinkers, etc., which talk about the social contract theory. That when we have one is that what is the basic nature of human beings? Whether by nature we are the people who help each other, or whether by nature we are wanting to overpower the other. What is our basic nature? Hobbes believed that anyone from political science, what is that famous quote? Yes, please.
Hobbes said that man by nature is selfish, nasty, and cruel.
So that is one construction. If that is the construction, then what will be happening? Everybody is fighting the other. So all these small groups, etc., are also fighting with each other to maintain their territory, to be cruel to the other. No, the actual words are different, also a little different. Brutal. I always forget, but that is whatever.
Nasty, short, and brutish.
Yes, 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 yes. Nasty, short, and brutish. So that's the typical phrase which Hobbes has used to describe who are humans. While Locke and Rousseau take that, no, we are all altruistic. We are all there to help each other. And that's what we also claim, that how are we different from animals? Because we care for each other, we can express our will each other, we can connect to the others, we look after the others. That is why we are humane. So if you are humane, then we want to help the other. But if with this conflict happening in society, people are becoming unsafe, so therefore a system had to be brought in place. So when you look at the liberal theorist perception of how state came into power and how do we give our power to the state to regulate violence. Our criminal law presently says what? The monopoly over causing violence is with the state. State can give you punishment, state can deprive your liberty if wrong has been done. We should not do it ourselves, excepting in cases of private defense.
Ma'am, we have a class from 2:55.
So it is 2:55? 2:53. Attendance laga denge. And you have to remember attendance part of yourself, because this is all your interest, not mine. I keep forgetting. Certainly, when you look at the social contract, it has been signed by propertied males. It was not signed by women. It was not signed by slaves. Slaves, women, children did exist, but the social contract which gave birth to the state, according to the liberals, and what was the purpose? To protect me against the other people. My family, my wife, my woman, my children, I will look after. That's not the body of the state. I gave up my power only in relation to the others, where it is considered that all humans are equal. But who are those humans? The property male. They were the only humans. Everybody else was not a human. And therefore, in the public spaces, what got to be recognized as normal state of affairs was all able-bodied, propertied men have to be treated as equal. So when you start from there, but they were the only ones who signed the contract.
No, white property male. That the idea itself was very Eurocentric. So it's not just, even indigenous men were not included within that ambit of property men, just white males.
But also the white property men. It was not yeah. So when you start from that understanding of the state, it's no wonder that we have laws which promote equality in the public sphere, but private sphere outside. We'll talk about private-public division, the private-public divide tomorrow. So see you.
Ma'am, what about the case material? Can't find it on the DU website.
It will come soon, because I can share with you the old case material already, but when we're editing the 3 new cases, we can give you the full, I've already shared the content, basic content page, but actual readings, I'll upload. I already have it on my inbox, in my Dropbox, so maybe I'll share the Dropbox with you.
Yes, ma'am.
So the new four new materials are still in the process of being, actually 3 cases only in the process of being edited. All other material we have, we'll share. We'll start sharing. Then I'll put some material already on the dashboard, and others you can, or maybe straight away you can go to my Dropbox.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome. किसी ने A लिखा है attendance में. How can you be absent by not marking it? I think they're trying to help me that I'm section A and P. So then I have to say AP and DP. Sometime before we settle down with our attendance pattern. I still see many of you have not put A or D before your names. Udit is saying no idea. I do not know what about he's saying no idea. I don't know what has got Preeti Rana. Is her class next. Stop recording.